Well, thank you so much for joining us for this conversation. I'm excited because you are a special and unique interviewee in this series. But I'll let you start out by sharing, if you would, your name, the major that you graduated with from Lipscomb, and then the year that you graduated.
Okay, my name is Jessica Langdon. I graduated in 2009 with a BA in business management.
That's great. And Jessica, you were our first ever SALT scholar. So
I was, I
not news
was.
to you, but news to those who might be watching our interview. And I was just so excited about the opportunity to get to talk to you as the first student who pursued this graduation honor back in 2009 when the SALT program was really only a year and a half old. And so it was really, really awesome to have you be our first SALT scholar and have you be already a service minded individual who wanted to take that a step further in your participation with the SALT program.
Well, thank you.
So, where can we find you these days? What are you up to?
So I still live in Nashville with my college sweetheart. We will be celebrating our 10-year wedding anniversary this summer. And we have a 1-year-old son and a 7-year-old lab. Um, and I have and am a registered interior designer with the state of Tennessee.
Fabulous. When did you go through that certification?
Let's see. So after Lipscomb, I went to a design school here in town, graduated from there in 2012, and I think I've been registered with the state since 2015.
Oh, fabulous. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
And I see the photo over your shoulder of your son, which is precious.
Yes. Right
Yeah,
there. That's a
that's so
newborn
great.
photo. Yes.
That's so great. I love it. So take us back then to 2008, 2009.
Yeah.
What was the focus of your SALT Scholar project, which doubled as your honors thesis at the time, right?
Yes. So it was a double whammy for me. But I worked with Habitat for Humanity on working on the web copy for their website, and also worked on interviewing several nonprofits around Nashville. And my thesis was on best practices for volunteer training.
Great.
And that also played into the Habitat website and just working on what it said and helping be more informative for their volunteers.
Yeah, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. So as you think back, and especially now that you're 10 years out, a little over 10 years out of graduation, what benefits did your service learning experiences at Lipscomb provide you? Um, and also, as you think about in what ways your service experiences were related to what you're doing now, or were not totally related, how have they been beneficial regardless of that connection?
Yeah, so I think one of the best things for me was it really exposed me to the geography of Nashville and some other things going on in Nashville that I probably wouldn't have been exposed to. I was not from here. I was from a pretty small town in comparison to Nashville, even Nashville 10 years ago. um, and I don't think without some of that service learning component, I would have strayed so far from campus. Not that it was so far, but downtown would have definitely been intimidating. Um, so I think learning about the city, but also it really has made me more empathetic to some of the situations that our neighbors are in. For a while, I was really involved with Green Street Church of Christ ministry and doing a dinner Wednesday night with some of the homeless population. And just hearing their stories sort of makes you more aware of what's going on.
Yeah.
And I think it also helped instill this feeling of it's really important to give back to your community, whether with time or resources in any way that you can.
That's great. That's great. Have you stayed in touch at all with Green Street, what they're up to these days?
I have not. I unfortunately lost contact with them after graduation, but I've heard that they're doing great
Yeah,
things.
they really are. And I just mentioned it, especially because of your design interest. They have micro homes on the property of the
Yeah.
church.
Mhm.
And so it's
Mhm.
just fabulous how they're utilizing the physical property of the church to be the church. But you're exactly right with your service that you did with them in undergrad. You know, they were really one of the entities that was on the front line serving our homeless community and have
Mhm.
continued to do so. So I love what you've talked about in terms of, yeah, leave the campus bubble to
Yes,
see
it's
what's
a
going
whole
on.
different world out there.
Exactly. Exactly. And service is sometimes the easiest entree and avenue into
Oh yeah.
getting
Hmm.
getting to be a part of a community that's outside of the immediate university. So that's great. So as you think back on your time since graduation, what were kind of some of the unexpected things, like the curveballs maybe of life, that you didn't anticipate but you've been through?
Hmm.
Now that you're on the other side of those, you might have some words of wisdom or some perspective to offer to current students.
Oh, sure. So I think the biggest curveball was the year that I graduated was the recession. Um, it had really started that fall, and we were in, and presenting on it. And I remember in the fall of my senior year, my plan was to go work for a nonprofit. That's just where I thought I would be. And then the recession happened and no one was hiring. I remember going to the job fairs that the school sponsored or promoted, and there were some companies there, but hardly any. Um, and I was minoring in interior design at the time at Lipscomb. I was like, well, I guess I'm going back to school. So that's what I did, and it actually has been a huge blessing. I didn't think I would go back to school. Um, Certainly not in the fall of my senior year. So I think being able to be flexible and transition to that a little bit, because now I'm in a career that I love. And I've been able to work with several nonprofits in Nashville as a designer, which has also been an interesting
Yeah,
way to give back and help them further their mission some. So
that's really cool.
I would say just roll, roll with the punches
Yeah.
a little bit. And sometimes the least expected
Mm.
things bring great joy.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And is very timely right now that we're in a pandemic
Yeah.
and all of the
Hmm.
things that are going along with that. And I had forgotten about the timing of that, Jessica, until you brought that up. And what's so interesting too is I remember you to have been kind of a type A student. So you were
Oh, yeah.
prepared, you were responsible, you had a plan, and
I
you
was
were working
gonna
that plan.
do it.
Yes. So
That
this
plan.
idea that even in all of your efforts to prepare, things
Mhm.
went sideways and you were able to pivot. And then now you're able to look back on what seemed like this insurmountable challenge actually was a way forward for you. And so for me, that's a great reminder. I love hearing that tonight, even for myself. And then, just for our students right now to be thinking about that, um, when the road feels really, really challenging, sometimes it's the path that's going to get you to where you want to go. So that's
And
fabulous.
just keep going.
Yeah.
Just just keep going. It'll work out.
Yeah. One foot in front of the other. That's
That's
awesome.
right.
Good. Good. Um, what are some of the things you wish you had known at graduation that you feel like could have helped you transition into your next phase?
I think let me go with the type A little bit, which was sort of forced on me. But there's been a lot of times, either in life or even things that come up in a job on a certain project. Since I work in the field of construction, there's unexpected things that happen all the time. And it's not necessarily anybody's fault. You just have to roll with it. And so I think there's a way to still be organized and have a plan, but just knowing that sometimes you've got to shift that plan. And I think too, just the importance of kindness, just being kind to people, and even when you're upset with someone or you're in a disagreement, approaching that person with kindness gets you so much further than if you
Yeah.
go in just you know blazing
Sure.
and you have to be right.
Right.
Just if you can let go of that a little bit, it
Yeah.
makes life easier.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So have a plan, have, you know, your good grounded centeredness, but also know that
Be
sometimes
willing to throw away the plan.
we have to be soft around the edges, be able to be
That's right.
flexible, and then know that sometimes the plan gets thrown out the window. I
That's right.
think that's good advice for all of us to keep in mind too. So, as you think back on your time since Lipscomb and you think about the skills that you developed in your service learning projects, what were some of those skills and abilities from SALT projects that have helped you since graduation?
I would say the biggest one is project management. With several of the things that I worked on, there was a lot of coordination of parts, and whether that was coordinating people to be somewhere, coordinating information that I was receiving, coordinating communication, um, coordinating physical paper at certain times, that is a skill that I use every day. Um, and I think that translates to most jobs too, is just knowing how to manage those things, knowing when to delegate, knowing how to prioritize, knowing how to balance, um, even sort of a work-life balance thing. Because even in school, sometimes it's easy to get really wrapped up in school and forget to take a step back. And I think that once you get a chance to step away and give yourself a little break, you come back more energized and with a clearer head to really tackle the problem that's in front of you.
That's great. Because a lot of things that exist in the world outside of school are beginning at step one and then finding your way to
Right.
cross the finish line and finish that project. And so for students to realize they are learning that skill
Mm-hmm.
and to know that they can rely on that, but then also that's a big part of what the world of work requires is
Right. Right.
here's your tools, here's your instructions, and we'll see you on the other side when you're done with it.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah,
great.
and I think the autonomy too in decision making that this whole program provided, in terms of at least when I was in it, here are the requirements that you need to meet for graduation. But we aren't necessarily going to tell you to reach tier one, you have to go do this, and for tier two, you have to do that, and for your, you know, thesis, you have to do this. There was a lot of decision making that went into it, and so it is like you were saying. Here's where you start, here's where you have to be, and figure out a way to get there.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of right ways to get there,
Yeah.
but you just set a course and you work towards it.
That's great. Yeah, I think that definitely holds true for students doing service learning now, for students studying now. I think that's all of that is very true and is still a part of the reality of what it looks like to work towards success. Um, Beyond what you've shared already, what
Mhm.
are some words of advice that you have for current students?
So my biggest advice for any college student that I talk to is to travel as much as you can. Both my husband and I did the global learning program in Vienna, which we highly recommend, but that isn't a reality for everyone. So just you can travel stateside. It doesn't have to be international. I think you can even travel in your own city. Nashville has some amazing cities, each have their own little personality. So, you know, if you don't have the time or the resources to leave the city, go explore here. But anything that exposes you to something that's different than what you're used to, uh, it expands your worldview and makes you a more rounded citizen. Just to experience someone else's culture, I think gives you an interesting perspective too. I know for me in design, I think travel is a huge benefit to be able to see other parts of the world, other parts of the country, and then bring back, you know, that information and that view to my clients is, I think, something that's appreciated.
Yeah, that's great. Just even the thinking about let me have experiences and thought outside of myself
Hmm.
because that actually helps me do my job better.
Oh yeah, and just to break from the monotony. I mean,
Sure.
even if you love your life and it's great and you love your job and you love school and you love everything about it,
Mhm.
sometimes it does just feel like you're in a rat race a
Yeah,
little bit. And quarantine emphasizes
sure.
emphasizes that because you feel a little bit stuck. So I
Mhm.
think anything that breaks you out of that routine just
Yeah. That's fabulous. And even what's funny, Jessica, is the focus of Lipscomb's quality enhancement plan that has now come after the SALT program is actually
Mhm.
focused on cross-cultural engagement. So
Perfect.
you're just on the leading edge of everything.
Basically what we're saying.
You were the first SALT scholar. Then you had suggestions for how we could even go from there. And lo
It's
and
just
behold, the university was listening and we didn't even know it.
they heard. They heard.
That's so great. That's so great. Well, thank you so much for your time in uh, doing this interview with me. I appreciate it.
Well, thank
And I'm so
you.
glad to connect with you, and I'm so glad for our students to hear from you.
Well, thank you. It was great to talk to you too.